I'll find out and I'll send you his name.
Yeah, I've seen
It's a long time. It's 10 years ago now, so...
Steve Cohen is
Steve
the, yeah,
Cohen.
yeah, yeah. That
Steve
came
Cohen.
from the controller.
Well, he was the big sponsor of that year's thing. He said, not a penny.
Oh, and that's who basically said no Roger Waters.
Yeah.
So, first of all, let me just ask you about these issues with anti-Semitism for a second.
Yes.
You talked about the horror and sickness and disgust you feel watching what the Israelis are doing in Gaza, and I have to say, for me, and maybe it's just a byproduct of things I focus on, but I honestly don't recall anything that has made me sicker or more disgusted than seeing the level of suffering that's taking place in Gaza right now, and knowing that we're only at the beginning, way closer to the beginning than the end. It's one of the worst crimes, if not the worst one I've seen in my life. But when the attack on October 7th in Israel happened from Hamas, what was your reaction to that?
Let's wait and see what happened. Well, it was my first reaction. My second reaction was, how the hell did the Israelis not know this was going to happen? And I'm still a little bit down that rabbit hole. Mm-hmm. I mean, didn't the Israeli army in those 10 or 11 camps hear the bangs when they blew up whatever they had to blow up to get across the border? Mm-hmm. There's something very fishy about that.
Yeah, we had an Israeli Knesset member on who said it seems inconceivable. This is one of the most surveilled places on the planet. And there's obviously going to be a lot of investigation, maybe not an honest one, but Israelis are angry about that as well. What I'm asking about, though, is do you think what Hamas did on October 7th can be justified?
Well, we don't know what they did do, but was it justified for them to resist the occupation? Yeah. But again, it's what you said, it's the Geneva Conventions. They're absolutely legally and morally bound to resist the occupation since 1967. It's an obligation.
But are there limits on the way in which they can resist?
As I said in the statement that I put out after it, I said, if war crimes were committed, I condemn them. I don't care who it is.
And here we are now 3 weeks or so after. Do you think there's been evidence that's emerged that suggests they committed those?
There may have been individuals. I was reading a news story this morning, which Grey Zone, our friend Max Blumenthal. So there's a long story which I read this morning, but Haaretz have finally come out with figures of how many people were actually killed and who they were
on that day.
On that day, yeah. And so probably the first 400 were Israeli military personnel. That is not a war crime.
No, clearly everyone thinks military officials and military targets or soldiers in Israel are
depends if
military
you believe
targets.
in the Geneva Conventions or not,
right?
Or the United Nations.
But what about targeting civilians or abducting them?
No, of course not. No, right. Of course I don't condone that. But the thing was thrown out of all proportion by the Israelis making up stories about beheading babies. They even got the President of the United States, dotard that he is, to claim that he had seen photographs
of the beheaded babies. Yeah, and then admitted that he actually didn't. Yeah,
I mean, you know, it's. But what we do know is, whether it was a false flag operation or not, or whatever happened, and whatever story we're going to get to, and we don't know if we will ever get much of a real story. It's always hard to tell what actually happened. They're calling it their 9/11. What the hell happened on the American 9/11? Nobody